Good evening. I'd like to call the Monday, January 24th, 2022 regular session. Madam Vice President, would you like to take our roll call tonight?
All board members are accounted for except Jennifer Nelson. She is joining by phone, but she will not be voting.
Thank you. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. And is the flag over there? Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We will now move on to our first special presentation about the installation of roundabouts. Dr. Beresford.
Thank you. We have with us tonight some special guests. We had a meeting recently with Jeremy Cashman, who's going over there to the podium at this time. And the meeting was about 2 roundabouts that are to be installed this summer in front of Carmel High School. And so we've got some folks from the high school over there and folks, and Jeff Worrell's there as well. And so Jeremy's going to give us a presentation to learn all about that and how that will work out in front of Carmel High School. So Jeremy, take it away.
Thank you, Dr. Beresford. Can everyone hear me okay? Again, I'm Jeremy Cashman. I'm a Director of Engineering at the City of Carmel. I've been City Engineer, Director of Engineering for almost 8 years now. So during my time here with the city, we built a lot of fantastic projects and a lot of roundabouts. So to date, we're up to roundabout number 142. And I'm here tonight to discuss 2 more additional roundabouts and some road improvements in front of the high school. Several years ago, we passed some funding for a roundabout at 4th Avenue and Main Street. And so then we've been in the planning stages for several years on that. As part of the planning process, the project has evolved, and that evolution has come in meeting with the school and also meeting with the library. As you're all probably aware, the library is undergoing a large transformation of its own right now that I think is supposed to be, I don't want to pin anybody down, but I think it's supposed to be done this fall. So we're actively coordinating our construction project with the library. Also, the school at the same time has a lot of different construction projects going on. So we have been actively coordinating those. When we first started out with the project, the main goal was to put a roundabout at 4th Avenue and Main Street. This particular roundabout, or this particular intersection, is currently a signalized intersection with push-button pedestrian crosswalks. It is one intersection that we do have some maintenance issues from time to time with those detectors and push buttons working correctly. So it seems like just about every time that we get a signal working 100%, it snows or rains or it gets a little bit windy and then it starts acting up again. So that is one of the beauties of the roundabouts, is they're a lot less maintenance from a technical standpoint to keep them running. The main reasons for installing the roundabouts is the main reason is safety from our proven track record on safety with roundabout installations. We recently completed a study with the Insurance Institute of Highway Safety, and of that study came that injury crashes were 40% lower in roundabouts than what could be expected at traditional intersections. So that's one of the main reasons. There's a lot more to that study, and it's available online, but the main goal is that the main outcome really is that a single lane roundabout is pretty much the safest intersection treatment you can have from an accident crash perspective. So now, this intersection is a lot different than other roundabouts within the city, in being that the high school is on the north side, the library on the south side. There's a lot of pedestrian activity happening between the two. So our other goal of the project is mobility, and that mobility, you have the safety side, not only cars, vehicles, pedestrians, and bikes, but then the mobility of being able to get vehicles through the intersection, but then also pedestrians. We need to safely get pedestrians across. So our number one kind of design feature of the roundabout going into the project was that we were planning for this to be a single lane roundabout with raised pedestrian crossings. So the raised pedestrian crossings we have recently installed along Range Line Road at Range Line and City Center, Range Line and Elm, Walnut, and Carmel Drive. So with those raised crosswalks, we get the added benefit of slowing vehicles down. Anecdotally, as I've driven through multiple roundabouts within the city, that's a 5 to 7 mile an hour difference. So that's a very big difference when you're talking about vehicles and pedestrians. The story that I used to have when I would go from City Hall down to either walking across to Kroger for lunch or taking my vehicle in for service further south on Range Line Road is when Carmel Drive and Range Line Road was a signal with push button pedestrian crossings. I had about a 99.5% hit rate of having to jog across the intersection even when I had the crosswalk. So since we've installed the roundabouts, I haven't had that. And I'll purposely go out and walk them during key times, lunch hour. Lunch hour is actually one of the peak travel times on Range Line. So that's what we're really trying to foster and promote is safety amongst all users. And this slide here, it's probably a little bit hard to read, but this slide kind of depicts what happens to a pedestrian at different speeds. This is from ITE, which is a transportation engineers group that we're a part of, but at 20 miles an hour, 30 miles an hour, and 40 miles an hour. And basically the blue pedestrians are pedestrians that are safe from an encounter with a vehicle. You can see there's a lot more red pedestrians the higher you get. So as we look at all our intersections, this is one of the main reasons why we promote roundabouts as well, and that when you have a signalized intersection, as we do in front of the high school today, there is nothing design-wise, geometry-wise, keeping a car going from that intersection at 70 miles an hour. The only thing that's keeping them from doing that is another vehicle in front of them. At a roundabout, that's different because we've purposely designed the roadway to slow vehicles down. And this is kind of one of the main pedestrian injury and fatality reasons why we construct roundabouts. And there it goes. So, as I said, when we first started the project, we had one roundabout at 4th and Main. As we started discussing more, the existing pavement in front of the high school is very, very wide, much wider than what a normal 2-lane road would be. So we went out one day and measured the road and determined that there's a lot of extra space here, and we can narrow the lanes down to 10-foot travel lanes and be able to incorporate a median. So, and with that median, we can landscape the median. The other thing it allows us to do is add some mid-block crosswalks. And then in further discussions, something that we always kind of wanted to do, but we're a little bit unsure of, was the roundabout at Lexington, which 4th and Main is on the left side of the screen, and Lexington roundabout is on the right side of the screen. So as we started developing the project more, we said, okay, this is actually an exhibit that's probably about, the concept's about 20 years old, but we brought it back out. So then we'll work with constructing the roundabout at 4th and Main, connecting the two roundabouts with the median. So one of the main things that we've done in other parts of the city of Carmel is a lot of access management. A lot of access management, cutting down on left turns is what really helps promote our safety numbers within the city as well. And so I'll go to the next slide here. We can kind of zoom in. The roundabout, for the most part, is a single lane roundabout. There are a couple right turn lanes that are really dedicated to getting into and out of the high school. So that'll help promote vehicular traffic out of the high school. Through a lot of different discussions we've had amongst city officials, school officials, library officials, was the key positioning of several of these mid-block crosswalks. So here you can see directly coming out of the high school, we've placed a mid-block crosswalk that's on the right-hand side of the screen there. And that will pretty much have a direct line for students getting from the high school over to the library. Students can still utilize the roundabout. There'll be raised crosswalks at the roundabout, but we were trying to, a lot of times pedestrians will take the least path of resistance. So you see this a lot on college campuses where you kind of don't really build sidewalks until you find out where the paths are, and then you can put sidewalks in. So we're trying to preemptively do that. Place the mid-block crosswalk there. And we'll also, the library improvements aren't on here, but our project will tie into all the library improvements because they'll have a nice promenade there on the corner. And then we'll pick up the sidewalk, and we're also, from a mobility standpoint, we want to widen the pedestrian sidewalk on the south side of Main Street throughout the entire project. As we shift to the east to the Lexington Boulevard roundabout, again, this is an additional mid-block crosswalk that we will install to best fit with how pedestrian traffic flows from the high school across the street. And then again, we'll have raised crosswalks at Lexington, so this is, for the most part, a single lane roundabout also. The best thing about this that we see is currently, when we've taken traffic counts on Main Street, even though this is a school zone, our 85th percentile speed is 33 miles an hour. So it's significantly higher than what you'd really want to see in a school zone. So that's taking into all hours of the day, but that really goes to show that we need to do some other key design features. We think through the design, through the landscape median, through the narrowing lanes, we can slow speeds down into the 25 miles per hour range. So if anyone's been on North Range Line Road, where we just completed construction the last several years, this is an example of what we call our rapid flashing beacon technology. We've implemented these at mid-block crosswalks on other areas along Range Line Road. We have them out on Spring Mill Road, and we also have the rapid flashing beacons at Main and Hazeldale, and at 116th and Town at those roundabouts. And then we've recently, as part of working with the schools on the new transportation plan, we've added several of these rapid flashing beacons at some key crosswalks getting to the schools. While I show this picture, this is what we have planned for the mid-block crosswalks on Main Street. And we're also planning to put them at the roundabout. So what the rapid flashing beacon does is allow a pedestrian to hit the push button, then it brings attention that there is a pedestrian at the crosswalk. So here again is the overall picture. Again, roundabouts bookending the project with pedestrian mid-block crosswalks in the middle. Again, a new landscape median. We'll have some enhanced lighting at the crosswalk so pedestrians will be lit. Especially this time of year where it seems to be always dark whenever you're going to or coming from somewhere. I think probably the one question that would be asked would be, when would this be under construction? So we would anticipate going to construction This summer, while school's out, our main focus will be the 4th and Main roundabout and a large portion of the median that would encompass the mid-block crosswalks. We'll also, the goal is to get the Lexington and Main Street roundabout constructed as well. But we're still a little bit unsure of that just because of some utilities. If that is not constructed this fall with the 4th and Main roundabout, that will be constructed next summer. But the goal is to focus construction when school is not in session as to not disrupt the already kind of, there's a lot of people coming and going to the school, so that's something we always have to work on. But I'd be open to any questions at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Cashman, for working with our administration and sharing with our board and our community. Before I open it up for questions, is there anything from our administration you'd like to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you. We've got Karen McDaniel over there and Toby Steele High School Administration that we're in that active group and working with the city. Also, we've got Todd Beneglio, I think, I saw him earlier too, is our facilities director, and of course Roger McMichael. Dave Woodward, who covers safety for the district, was also heavily involved. And then, of course, Jeremy, we appreciate you, Josh Kurz, Lieutenant Miller, Sergeant Sheff, and Jeff Warrow. It was a really good, productive meeting, and I'm real thankful that we work with the city so closely, and that our input can be taken and applied to different projects like this. We are excited that we'll be slowing down that traffic in front of the high school. The high school saw some advantages to having established those 2 walkways in the middle to try to funnel the majority of our kids that want to cross the street to go across those 2 areas rather than go through the parking lot. So some good advantages to that. The raised crosswalks we're really excited about because that's going to slow folks down even more. So it's just been another good situation where the city and the schools work together to benefit our kids and our community. So I really appreciate all the work that's been done. And I know we just hit you with a lot of information, so I'll stop talking. You can ask questions, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Dr. Beresford. Questions? Ms. Manberg?
Thank you. A few questions. My first question is fairly significant. If we are not going to be able to build the Lexington roundabout, how are we slowing down traffic coming westbound in front of the high school when we have those 2 crosswalks right there with our children crossing?
It's a good question. I mean, the main thing that will slow people down coming in is the narrowing of the lanes. So even what the goal would probably be is we would split the project in half. So one of the mid-block crosswalks would be installed. The other one would be as it currently is today. But we can add some additional striping if we need to add some bollards as we work through our maintenance of traffic plan. We can do that as well to slow people down coming into the area.
Okay, and at what point will you know that Lexington will not be a go come May 26th when you're anticipating on starting? Which I'm assuming that's the day you're hoping to start, since that's the day the kids are done with school?
It would be shortly after school's out. We're going to take the project out to bid in March. So
Okay.
I anticipate by mid-March we should have a better understanding of how those utilities work. There's some utilities if you drive out there, you can see them on the corner.
Yes.
So we're just waiting for some response back from there.
So when you say you're going to begin some of the narrowing of 100 and, I don't know, Main Street, so you will go halfway through? You will go a majority of the way? How much will it be narrowed for what length?
We could narrow the lanes basically through striping right away once we start
Okay.
construction, yeah.
Okay, now I'm having a tough time understanding on the south side of Main Street, what is that going on? Are those parking places? Is that a drop-off zone? What do I see on the road? It looks like 2 lanes.
Oh, I split. So that is a right turn lane. So one of the other things that we're doing as a economic benefit to the project is to leave the curb lines, the exterior curb lines where they are. So as we construct the project, we can still leave the right turn lanes there to the two properties to the south.
Okay.
So by leaving the curb lines in place, then we don't have to rework all of the underground storm sewer in the area, which then usually there, I know that for a fact there's gas line and fiber optic line running under that lane.
Okay. And I believe my last question. When you were noting that the NHTSA safety statistic right at the beginning with the decreased, when having roundabouts, we have a 40% reduction in accidents or 40% reduction, what was that statistic? And what I want to know more specifically, is that based on pedestrian or is that based on vehicular traffic?
That is based on the vehicular traffic. So there was the study that was performed by the Insurance Institute of Highway Safety took a look at intersections that were roundabouts, intersections that were not roundabouts, and compared the safety statistics even before and after construction. So, and really what that was doing was following up on a previous study that was done that showed there was a 70% reduction in accidents, 40% reduction in accidents with injury, or 40% reduction in accidents, 70% reduction in accidents with injury, and then a huge drop in fatalities. So there hasn't been a holistic pedestrian study done nationally. As we look at our statistics here locally, there are not that many pedestrian incidences throughout the city. I think there's less than a dozen a year, I think, when we look at it. So, because we really followed that up when we were redesigning Rangeline Road, because we really focused on that, okay, what can we do to make sure that the crosswalks are aligned for bikes and peds? And as we were looking at doing something different, we kind of found a couple different things from really overseas that kind of proved that we were already going down the right path, and that kind of showed in our data, really.
Okay. On 136th Street, the stadium crosswalk, it's a staggered, or I don't know, it's kind of yes, that. Is there any benefit to doing that along Main Street, and would you consider that?
That is something we haven't considered that yet, but we can consider that. Mainly why we did it on Smoky Row was because of the offset of the crosswalks. It's not really that offset because we tried making it wide too, so we get the most amount of pedestrians through there. So there are certain instances, like I know up on the Midland Trace Trail, they've done that also to try to slow bikes and peds down so that they stop in the median. And so that is something we can look into.
Okay, and are those two crosswalks coming from the school, are those raised as well, or only the ones that are raised are going around the roundabouts?
Crosswalks are the ones at the roundabouts. The two internal are just at grade. And again, most of that right now is for drainage, so we didn't have to completely rework the drainage in the area.
Okay, thank you.
I might also add that we are still going to staff those crosswalks, like they're staffed right now with crossing guards, and they do a wonderful job, out there in front of Carmel High School. So, and then when we get the second crosswalk in, I think the plan was to staff that one as well. So there will be plenty, and during heavy traffic times, at the start of school and end of the day, there'll be some help out there.
Thank you. Ms. Jackson?
Yeah, a couple questions. One is, could you share a little bit about what prompted this investigation or this proposal?
One of the main reasons is this is predominant area that we get a fair amount of speeding concerns, especially as we have vehicles driving fast through the school zone and then down into the arts and design district. So, and then also just the ability to move traffic through here and redesign the roadway to have a traffic calming effect as well.
Okay, and then how will this impact drop-off and pickups?
So we really won't know, well, we've discussed that internally, us and the school corporation. And I don't know if you guys want to speak to that more, just because that's kind of an ever-evolving science.
Can you hear me? You recall that we moved the carpool down to the stadium. So, and things are a little bit different now because we're also under construction, particularly on the east side, on the east side. So as far as the pickup, it's not up in this area now, it's down at the stadium.
And the move to the stadium was a permanent move?
Well, I hesitate to say anything's permanent, but we don't anticipate changing it anytime soon.
Okay.
Of course, if we felt there was some way to make it better, we would. But we did not put that in temporarily because we simply felt a need to separate the cars from the buses. And so neither one of them are going to go away. So I wouldn't anticipate it would change.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Ms.
That was one of the benefits of having the roundabout at Lexington as well. If there are vehicles on that side, getting them in and out a lot quicker. And the other thing that we've done, that's one of the main reasons why there's still 2 lanes along the north side of the road in that dedicated lane into the school. That way we can still move traffic that needs to get through the school, but then also efficiently get people in to where they need to be. And then the same thing with the turn lane on coming out of the school. We wanted to make sure that we were able to bifurcate that traffic, get the traffic that's heading west through the roundabout efficiently so that the other vehicles could get through.
And Ms. Williams has a question via phone. You're good.
Thank you. Sorry, it's not a perfect system of listening, so I just wanted to ask a couple questions, may have addressed, but just want to get clarification. I know as a driver myself, coming through that corridor, it seems that people are going fairly fast, and there are a lot of children crossing and meandering about. So my understanding is that the roundabout can significantly lower the speed of the drivers coming across Main Street. Is that correct, Mr. Cashman?
Yes, that is correct. And that was, again, one of our main goals of implementing the roundabouts here is the traffic calming effect.
And what is the average right now?
The average speed right now, did you say 33 mile an hour?
Like the 85th percentile is what a lot of traffic engineers set speed limits off of, and that was 33 miles an hour.
The 85th percentile was 33 mile an hour.
Okay, and then what would be the guesstimated average speed once these 2 roundabouts are completed?
That we feel like we can get down to that 25 miles an hour range that.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Down to the 25 mile an hour range.
Okay, and does 25 mile an hour less significantly decrease the severity of any accidents that could possibly occur?
Yes. Whenever there's any kind of vehicular collision, obviously if you're driving slower, it's a lot less. So that's, I know you're not here, but we can share with you the image I showed earlier that kind of showed range of speed with vehicles and pedestrians.
Yeah, we had a slide that showed the effects of the lowering of speed on accidents and fatalities, so we can make sure we get that to you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Any other questions, Jennifer?
No, I think that's, one of the things is the blinking crosswalk are they shown to be effective in getting drivers' attention?
Yes, they are. We've seen a very good, when they're used, we see a very good rate of vehicles slowing down. So much that once we started installing them, we started getting a lot more requests for them. They first went in kind of up at Clay Terrace. That's one of our highest pedestrian areas. And then we've also placed them at key mid-blocks in other parts of the city.
Ms. Spannenberg?
I have one other question. Coming out of the parking lot on the west side of the high school, will people, is that going to be one way going northbound when you're exiting? So one way to enter and then one way to leave?
Into the school property, and then there'll be 2 lanes exiting. The right lane will be a right turn only, and then the left lane will be you can go south, which
Okay.
is down, or to the left.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board? Thank you, Mr. Cashman and your team, and we look forward to continuing working with you.
Thank you for all your work, and I think we've, as a city, learned a lot from this process too, so we appreciate that, and it's good to work together.
Thank you. Okay, we will now move into the consent process of our agenda for tonight. Do I hear a motion to approve consent items, including personnel report, claims, payroll, approval of gift applications, and the minutes of the regular session December 13th meeting? Do I have a motion? Thank you, Mr. Kirschner. Second? Thank you, Ms. Spannenberg. Any discussion? Please raise your hand. All those in favor and signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries 4-0. We will now move into the public hearing portion of our agenda tonight. At this time, I need a motion to suspend the regular board meeting and open a public hearing regarding a lease between the Carmel Clay Building Corporation and Carmel Clay Schools and an additional appropriation not to exceed $53 million. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Ms. Spannenberg. A second? Thank you, Ms. Jackson. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you. Motion carries. Our board meeting is currently suspended. Mr. McMichael, would you please like to make any comments?
I would, thank you. The board examined and adopted a resolution on November the 22nd, 2021, which approving a form of lease by and between the Carmel Clay School Building Corporation and the school corporation. The lease resolution that you have before you this evening confirms the earlier resolution adopted at the 22nd meeting to permit the execution of the lease and to approve the issuance of bonds by the building corporation in an aggregate principal not to exceed $53 million to finance the projects. This project is auditorium, but also the renovation of the current auditorium. That's the entire project, and it's a part of a what we're referring to as the 2023 facility projects, which you've received information previously. The appropriation resolution that accompanies this appropriates those proceeds because after appropriation just essentially gives the authority to actually spend the money. And so that's the second resolution. And so the purpose of this public hearing is to provide opportunity for public comment relative to these 2 resolutions. We had previous public meetings for the project itself, an opportunity to speak to the project. So this is the resolutions for the lease.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. McMichael. At this time, I will offer members of the public an opportunity to make comments regarding the confirmation of the lease resolution and the adoption resolution on the additional appropriation. Comments must be specifically related to these 2 items. Off-topic comments are considered out of order. The hearing will last no longer than 30 minutes, and each speaker will have up to 3 minutes to speak. Please go to the microphone at this time, which is located right at this area. If there are no comments from members of the public, may I please have a motion to close the public hearing? Second? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Hearing is now closed. We will now move into our action items. 5.1, it is recommended that the board adopt the attached resolution regarding the lease between the Carmel Clay School Building Corporation and the school district and approve the appropriation of funds from the proceeds of the bonds issued by the school corporation. May I have a motion to approve? Thank you, Mr. McMichael. A second? Thank you. Discussion. Mr. McMichael, anything?
These are the two resolutions that I previously referred to.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Okay. At this time, all those in favor of approving the resolution regarding the lease between the Carmel Clay School Building Corporation and the school district and approve the appropriation of funds from the proceeds of the bonds issued by the building corporation, please signify by saying aye. Aye. 4-1. Thank you. We will now move on to our legislative letter. Mrs. Layla Spannenberg.
Thank you, Mrs. Browning. As we've discussed before, each year our school board puts forth a legislative letter to send to our local legislators statewide and sometimes federally, depending on what it is that we want to be sure that is recognized as important for legislation for this year. And I want to share that through our several versions, and the particular letter that we are bringing forth today has been vetted through our school board, the administration, as well as our legal counsel. This particular letter is really highlighting 4 different areas that we feel are common areas of interest where Carmel Clay Schools can be a resource to our legislators. We do realize that even the best intentioned proposed laws have sometimes a negative impact on our schools, and we're here to help our legislators better understand the impact of those, as well as push forward legislation that would really make Indiana a beacon state for our professional educators. We know right now we have a depleting workforce, and it's really important that legislation really promotes students going into the industry and really helps make it a very positive environment for our current professional educators. The 4 areas that we've highlighted in this particular legislative letter includes our recruiting and retaining of our educational workforce, different student support systems that we can have and we need to continue to have for our students, civility and decorum, as well as lessons learned from COVID-19. Some of the great things that we've learned and benefited by having to push ourselves outside to think outside of the box in really finding ways to educate every student, as well as some of the things that we have found that have had a negative impact on not only us, but all school districts statewide. So with that, I have our legislative letter. Dr. Beresford, do you have any other comments you'd like to provide with regards to the legislative letter at this time?
I would just share that superintendents across the state are spending a lot of time communicating with legislators, lawmakers all over the state, trying to communicate what the impact boots on the ground will be on some of the proposed legislation. And probably the most important thing that our lawmakers are hearing from superintendents is that every piece of legislation should be looked at through the lens of its impact on the teacher shortage. And it's a big problem, it's a real problem, and it's one that's coming that can have a devastating effect on not only the students today, but for decades to come. So that's probably the most significant piece of it.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion to approve the legislative letter? Second? Thank you. Any discussion? I just have one note. First of all, I want to thank you, Ms. Vandenberg, for your role as our legislative liaison. And this letter will be on the legislative portion of our website. Is that correct afterwards? Okay, thank you. Any other questions or discussion items? All right, we will now take a vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. We will now move on to 5.3, our bid award. It is recommended the Board of School Trustees award the bid for the Carmel High School Fieldhouse restroom renovations. Mr. McMichael.
Thank you. This recommendation is in the amount of $284,000. This provides for actually adding restrooms that are will be contiguous to the field house. Currently, there are certainly restrooms available, but they're just outside of the field house, so this will make it much more convenient and for people using the field house, and also provides for better supervision of students while they're in there. The project is a part of our 2020-2023 facility projects, and thus is funded with a general obligation bond that we sold previously.
Thank you, Mr. McMichael. Do I hear a motion to approve this bid award? Thank you, Ms. Vandenberg. Do I have a second? Thank you, Mr. Kirchner. Is there any discussion?
So, Roger, there were 2 responses, and they're recommending the lower bid, which was significantly lower. Is that correct?
Yes, and you'll notice there's considerable difference between these two, and we received just 2 bids, and so the second bid really was very high for many of the estimates that we had, and obviously is considerably about 35 or 40% more than the low bid, and so we're quite satisfied with the recommendation and with this contractor in this bid. And we really think the other one was probably had as much or more work than they could accomplish, and had they been awarded the bid, they would just come out very well on it.
Any other questions? Ms. Bamberg?
Roger, is there any reason why we didn't do this when we had the explosion and had several other things going on in that area? Why this particular project wasn't included, or it wasn't really due for any updates, or what's the rationale?
It wasn't that so much as the explosion was primarily covered by insurance, and so to do this project at that time, we would have had to have we didn't have the money to do it per se. We would have to either had sold a bond issue or pay cash for it. And so we were aware of it, and we had interest in doing it, but we couldn't really reasonably tie it with the work that was done after the explosion.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, we will now take a vote. All those in favor of the bid award for the Carmel High School Fieldhouse restroom renovations, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries 4-0. All right, we will now move on to change orders. It is recommended that the Board of Trustees approve the below listed change order for the Carmel High School HVAC replacement. Mr. McMichael.
Thank you. This is an add change order, just over $50,000. It's a result of some unforeseen conditions that were determined in the process of replacing the boilers in this area. And it was determined that we needed to also replace some very large pumps, and thus the need for this change order.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the change order for the HVAC replacement? Thank you, Ms. Jackson. Second. Thank you, Ms. Vandenberg. Is there any discussion? Thank you. I will make note that I also appreciate that we worked in collaboration with the Indiana Department of Homeland Security Boiler Inspection Group,
Yes.
who requested the installation of an emergency shutoff valve. which I'm sure is always appreciated if we need to turn it off.
Yes.
All right, we will now take a vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Motion carries. Thank you. All right. We are now moving on to public comment. We're very excited to bring this back to our meetings. Public comment shall be guided by the rules notated in the handout that everyone received this evening under the public comment guidance heading. Per board bylaw, speakers will be chosen by a random drawing. I have the numbered registration cards that were filled out by those who are wishing to speak, and those numbers are located in the basket. Dr. Ostrike is my bingo caller number for tonight, so thank you for that. He will call out 2 numbers at a time. The first will speak, and the second will be on deck. When your name is called, please go to the microphone and state your name for the record. You have 3 minutes to speak. We have a timer here on stage that we borrowed from Clay Athletics that will let you know how many minutes you have remaining. And we also on the screen are going to show the total time allotted. We want to thank you for participating. We do only have 2 comments tonight, but we still will follow our policy and do a random drawing. Dr. Ostrike, what is my first numbers?
All right, randomly, we're putting the numbers in play here.
He's very
And
excited about this, by the way.
They come out. Number 1 is first, and number 2 is on deck.
Great, fantastic. We have Jackie O'Keefe and Ingrid Muse. The microphone right up here. Thank you.
Good evening. As Ms. Browning said, my name is Jackie O'Keefe, and I know there's a rule that we're not allowed to directly address board members, but I got permission from the folks up front, and so I just want to say that it is our new school board president's birthday today. Her name is Ms. Katie Browning. So if you're not aware of that, please wish her a happy birthday. I don't know Katie very well. I know her son because our sons are friends, and I know that amazing kids can't come from bad parents. And so if he is any reflection of you as a person, you are way up there. So happy birthday. I'll make this as quick as possible. Normally when I speak, which is not very often, I come prepared with everything typed out because that is what makes me feel comfortable. And in all honesty, I wasn't planning on speaking until I got here tonight. And so notes aside, as much as possible, I'm just going to do this from the heart. The first time I ever spoke at a school board meeting was the first school board meeting I ever attended, and it was in June, and it was on the topic of masks. And I stood up and read a lot of statistics and peer-reviewed studies about the ineffectiveness of masks, and was hoping that in my rose-colored glasses that would change the day and we would walk away with our kids not wearing masks. That didn't happen. I do remember you all talking amongst yourselves and telling us, reiterating the fact that masks were optional, and seemed a little confused why we were up there speaking, but I felt it in my gut that while it was in the plan that it was optional, that that was going to be short-lived. Our kids went to school for a couple of days with masks optional and found out 3 days after school that they would be required. My kids missed that first full week of school because we were waiting to be approved for our exemption request because my son is medicated for anxiety, and it was denied. So we had to wait a week to get a face shield that was approved, and then he came back to school a week later. He made it through a few hours of school before I got a call from the principal because he was struggling because all of his friends and classmates were giving him such a hard time. Weeks later, we're still dealing with that. He still talks to his therapist every single week about how hard it is being at school, being one of the only kids who doesn't believe in masks, having other kids his age telling him that he doesn't care about others and that he is a killer. And as a parent, it is extremely hard to witness. I was in this room probably a month ago for middle school orientation. We were packed with maybe 50 people not in the seats. Masks were optional. Some of us wore them, some of us didn't, and nobody dropped dead. So I am here to beg you from my heart of hearts to consider making masks optional, or at least giving us a period of time where we can maybe try it out for 2 weeks and see what happens. And if it doesn't, let's go back to it. But please, 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 please just consider it, and let's just see what happens.
Thank you, Ms. O'Keefe. Ms. Muse.
Well, Jackie just took the words right out of my mouth. I'm here because I wanted to, first and foremost, congratulate Katie Browning on her new appointment as president, and we welcome you, and we look forward to working with you as a community. And happy birthday. Secondly, I'd like to extend appreciation and gratitude to Dr. Beresford and the board for allowing the community to fully participate in the board meetings. I appreciate the fact that we are able to congregate here and that our voices can be heard. On that note, I am calling for, and I have noticed there is improved transparency on the website. Some documents can be found which couldn't be found previously in association to specifically tonight. The agenda, I was able to pull up some information in respect to what was going to be decided upon today. One thing I was disappointed in not being able to find was the legislative letter. So I appreciate that that will be posted later on. And in respect to improvement plans, there are a number of resources that, are not, I'm just hoping that maybe we can, as parents, when we're able to look at the improvement plans for the schools, we can do our due diligence and be able to access the materials that decide those improvement plans. So on that note, thank you so much for having us as a community here and hearing our voices.
Thank you. And I appreciate the birthday wishes. Birthdays are the best. All right, we will now move on to reports. Student data report, Dr. Amy Dudley.
Colleen. Well, good evening. Thank you. Give me 2 seconds to change this view. Well, okay. Well, you're going to get to see the first slide.
You can
and
just click under display settings on the middle at the top, and then it'll ask you to swap. At the top, that one. Yep.
Perfect.
They'll let you click it.
For whatever reason, it's not. Well, for whatever reason, it doesn't look like it's letting me swap them between the different ones. So you'll get to see the first slide and the next slide coming. So anyway, this evening I'm going to give you an update on the work that we've been doing over in our curriculum instruction and department. We've been leading over the last year to make sure that our students are receiving a world-class quality education in Carmel Clay schools. And first I want to say a big thank you and how proud I am of our teachers, of our administrators, and of our staff to continue to focus on student learning. These last 2 years have had so many different challenges in education, and I just can't say enough about just how hard our teachers, our staff, our administrators have all worked to really help our to focus on that education. And, they've had to do all of the other pieces with the contact tracing and making sure our students are safe in the classroom. And they did all of those things as well as focus on the education. So we're very proud of that. So first, we hear a lot in the media and when you're talking with different people, we hear a lot about some learning loss. And we've challenged that narrative of that learning loss, where we don't have learning loss in per se that we have an 8th grader that's suddenly reading at a 5th grade level. However, we do have unfinished learning. So we have many students that did make progress, and we have students that have unfinished learning and unrealized potential in some areas. And it's our job to determine where every student is and to give the students that just right instruction each and every day. We also have had some unexpected learning over the past 2 years. For example, we've had students' access to and expertise in technology have grown exponentially. For example, we've had students, we have now in kindergarten through 9th grade, a one-to-one setting with all of our students that have a Chromebook. And next year, from kindergarten through 12th grade, we'll have a one-to-one setting where kindergarten through 11th grade, all students will have Chromebooks, and our seniors will have the opportunity to either have a Chromebook or to bring their own technology to Carmel High School. So we'll be a completely one-to-one by next year. And that happened very quickly due to the pandemic and our need to go virtual and hybrid over the last 2 years. Also, another unexpected learning has been the 21st century skills such as critical thinking, communication, creativity, and collaboration became amplified across all settings over those past 2 years. So those are some good things that have come out of the challenges in the last 2 years. And we have people that continue to say, but when are we going to go back to normal? I cannot wait to go back to normal. And we have that temptation to go back to what is comfortable. And to illustrate that, I'd invite you to go ahead and cross your arms across your body right now. Now, reverse the way you're crossing your arms. It feels uncomfortable. You want to go back to normal, the way you do it normally. You want to go back to what is comfortable. However, we want to take this opportunity to really look at what is that next normal. Rather than just saying we want to go back to normal, we want to use what we've learned, and we want to make sure that we're using that to reimagine, to redefine, and to reinvent the next normal in Carmel Clay schools. So how do we do that? And how have we been doing that since we've come back to school? So this is a review of what we've done over the last year, year and a half, and then where we'll be working this next year as well. So when we focus on that learning loss narrative, that results in deficit thinking, and it really grants permission to lower expectations. We do not want to lower expectations for any students. We want to change that narrative, as I mentioned earlier, and we want to focus on accelerating that learning for all students. And the way we need to accelerate that learning is we need to know identify those skills and those concepts that each student is ready to learn. And we do this by analyzing our student data. And we have a lot of different student data that our teachers and administrators engage in analyzing that data. And one of those ways is our NWA MAP growth assessment. Our students back in the fall, we had over 10,000 students that engaged in NWA MAP, and that's kindergarten through 8th grade, all of our students in kindergarten through 8th grade. And then some of our students in certain classes at the high school also engage in NWA MAP. And we had 48 teachers over this past year to have some advanced training in professional development and using that student data. We spend a lot of time looking at that data. So we had 457 teachers and administrators collaborating in teams and really drilling down to say, what are our students ready to learn? What are those skills that they have? And then those teachers spend many, many hours on looking at that data. That's just one piece of the data that we look at. We have a variety of other pieces, and we're always using that to what is next, what's our students ready to learn, to use that to identify the lessons that we're planning to make sure that we're meeting the needs of all of the individual students in the classroom. Another area that we have focused on is literacy. We want to make sure, we know that literacy, having those strong skills in literacy is that cornerstone for the lifelong learning that all of our students and that success that we want all of our students to be able to have. And this past year, we've focused on those foundation literacy skills in our early literacy. So in our K through 3 classrooms, we've implemented a comprehensive reading, spelling, and handwriting program that emphasizes those foundational skills such as phonemic awareness, phonics, high-frequency words, reading fluency, vocabulary, comprehension, as well as handwriting and spelling. In order to have that strong implementation, though, we had a lot of professional development. Our elementary teachers engaged in hours and hours of professional learning over this past summer. They had an opportunity to attend over 500 summer professional development sessions. We also had teachers engage in a letters training, which is focused on those early literacy initiatives, and that's a 40-hour training that our teachers did. That's an online training that they engaged in working with that. And then we also have our instructional coaches where we have coaching cycles focused on literacy. We had over 2,000 coaching cycles where our instructional coaches worked with our teachers in the elementary school that was focused on specifically literacy areas. And another piece that we looked at is our early literacy screenings. You may recall several years ago the state passed a law that we need to screen all of our students in early literacy. And we have screened all of our students in kindergarten through second grade to look at any student that might be at risk for having some deficits so that we can intervene early, so that we can make sure that we're meeting the students' needs quickly and clearing up any issues that we might have with that early literacy. We've also focused on our secondary literacy as well in some different ways. In the high school, we worked on, last year we focused on a program evaluation. We had a committee that was made up of teachers, parents, administrators, as well as students. This year we have that same committee working on that in the middle school for our language arts. And the work that these committees have done, or that they'll do in the middle school case, is they look at prioritizing and mapping those essential standards, and also putting them into thematic quarters for the year. They identify the core novels and the supplemental text and the literature circles, titles that would be recommended for adoption. And then they develop common summative assessments with the corresponding rubrics as well in the work that they've done. Our middle school, we have a committee of teachers, parents, administrators that are working on that work right now. And you can see they'll have monthly meetings. We also have all of our language arts teachers at the middle school will work on developing that curriculum. And then we also continue with that professional development with our instructional coaches at the middle school. Over this past year, we've had 131 coaching cycles that were focused specifically on language arts. At the high school, all of our English teachers worked on developing that curriculum. And we adopted 33 new titles at the high school, and we developed 6 new classes at the high school. And you can see they spent a total number of hours, over 1,000 total hours, with all of the teachers working together to focus on what that instruction needs to look like to best meet the needs of our students. Literacy is not the only area that we focus on. Some other areas that we've been looking at is our math, our science, and our STEM. Over this past year, we engaged 61 teachers in extended professional development that engaged the teachers in looking at the shifts in math instruction over the last several decades, also providing, looking at the current research and the best practices published by the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics. Also using, how do they use and explore mathematical discourse and problem solving to deepen students' conceptual understanding? And how do you make sure you're using that rigor and truly differentiating math at all levels for our students? Also, this professional development focused on integrating those formative assessments into our everyday practices and exploring grouping structures so that how they impact different learners in the classroom. We are also engaging, we've just started to engage in a program evaluation for our K-12 math programming. And again, this committee, in our continuous improvement efforts that we focus on, this committee is made up of teachers, of parents, administrators, as well as students. And their focus, their work, they'll look at what's the best practices, look at the research for math, look at our current data and what is happening in math, and then determine a vision and recommendations for the future of our math programming. And then this committee will move into developing curriculum maps with the math and selecting materials, as well as developing professional development learning plans in order to improve that instruction in math. Science is another area that we're really looking at to make sure we're accelerating that learning for all of our students. And this past year, we focused on fully implementing Project Lead the Way launch for our students in elementary school. And we had 421 teachers that engaged in professional development, over 2,000 hours of professional development to become certified to teach Project Lead the Way launch at the elementary school. And we also had 11 instructional coaches that were certified to become trainers so that we can continue to certify any new teachers that come in to teach this program in our K-5 science classes. Another area that we're really excited about, and the kids are very excited, I love going into these classrooms, is our STEM program and our STEM classes. We added a new STEM course at our elementary school, at all 11 of our elementary schools. And we had 25 teachers and administrators work on developing the STEM course. And in the STEM course includes design thinking, as well as problem solving, mathematical practices, and then also looking at in the computer science areas and teaching those computer science standards as well as coding. And our youngest learners starting in kindergarten are learning how to code. Another area that supports that is not just the teachers that are helping our students to learn, but we had over 300 students engage in an hour of code. And the hour of code was a day that our high school students, over 30 high school students, facilitated virtual hour of code where they worked with fourth grade students and they worked on activities on coding. And so it's not just our teachers working with our students, but we also have other students working with students. And the kids thoroughly enjoyed that day and that hour of code. Continuing with our continuous improvement, we're not finished yet with our update on what we've been working on. But in some other areas with our social studies, we have just launched this past year, we've started our social studies program evaluation, moving into materials adoption and curriculum writing as well. And the focus with that, again, we have a committee from K-12 of teachers, parents, students, administrators, working together to really look at what are those recommendations, what's the vision of the program to move us forward, and then what does that curriculum need to look like and those materials to support that curriculum in the area of social studies. And it might seem that we have a lot of committees and program evaluations going on, but what has happened because of COVID, many things got pushed and moved, and so we're out of cycle. Typically, we do these in a 6-year cycle, but we're all out of cycle because COVID messed up a few of our timings of these areas. So we also have, looking at our world language and also our visual arts, we have teachers engaged right now in developing the curriculum for world language as well as visual arts. Last year, they did engage in a program evaluation cycle and came out with recommendations for both of those programs, and now they're developing that curriculum. And then we also have teachers in our world language department that are engaged in a monthly book study on language acquisition and really working together. And this includes our teachers at the high school as well as teachers at the middle school, really working together on that world language piece that we're excited about. I shared with you a couple months ago the next level programs from the state that has programs where our students take 2 courses and then have capstone courses. So we're working on developing the curriculum for those capstone courses, those new courses that we've added. And then we also have applied skills courses that our applied courses are for our functional academic students as well as our life skills students. And last year we worked on developing that curriculum for our health and wellness applied skills class, our U.S. government applied skills class, and also our applied economics class. All of those different curriculum areas, we also have not forgotten about the work in some of our special programs. High ability, we have 33 teachers over this last year that just completed their high ability certification, and we offered that through a grant where our teachers had the opportunity to take high school or college courses to receive that certification, and they were reimbursed for completing that. We also have a committee that is made up of teachers, administrators, and parents to look at our high ability, the high ability identification, thank you. Our high ability identification, and really focusing on what is that, what are those parameters for that, and so that is we're looking at that at K-8, and we'll have recommendations coming out of that committee. They've been doing the work over the last year, determining what that needs to look like. For our English learners, you can see we have 977 currently, as of today, English language learners. And we're excited that we have some new supports for our students that went into place this past year. One of those new supports at the secondary level is we have teacher of records, that these are high school teachers and middle school teachers that have a caseload of English language learners. They're not necessarily in their core classes, but they work with those students where they are an advocate and work with the student, work with the teachers in all of their classes to help support the learning, also to help support the teacher and what that instruction might look like. And then at our elementary and our middle school, we have 3 instructional coaches specifically focused on that English language learning, so we can help our teachers to know what are those best practices to meet the needs of our students, because we have 977 students, and our students that are English learners, they speak over 68 different languages. So we do have a wide, diverse population of students there. We also had 38 teachers that recently received their certification for the English language learning certification. Again, that was through a grant where the teachers had the opportunity to take college credit and get that certification, and they were reimbursed. And we just today launched another round to get more teachers certified to take up that college credit for their own certification as well. And the teachers that come out of these programs that have that certification can then also help support our students as those English language learners, teacher of records in all of our buildings. And then another program that we've talked a lot about over the years is our AVID program. Our AVID program we offer in our middle school and our high school. And this is a program that really helps our students with executive functioning skills, with organizational skills, and study skills. And we continue to actively recruit students for this program, and if you know students that are in it, or if your own students have been in it, it's a really powerful program to help the students to be successful. Our AVID program is actually up over this past year, up 2%, and looking at the students that are applying to go next year, we think it will increase even more. And so you can see we have about 15% of our students at Carmel Middle School that participate in the AVID. At both Clay and Creekside, we have about 19%. And then at the high school, we have about 6% of our students that do participate in the AVID program. So that has grown, and we're continuing to grow that program to help support our students. We're very proud of that work. And one of the last pieces I want to talk about is our embedded professional learning. And there's so many different ways that professional learning takes place. So from everything from book studies to workshops to conferences to our professional learning communities and collaboration in the schools. But one of the most effective professional learning models that moves knowledge into practice is our instructional coaching model. And so we're so fortunate that we have a strong team of instructional coaches. In kindergarten through 8th grade, we have 14 building coaches, as well as we have 3 district coaches that support literacy, and we also have 3 coaches that support our English learners, district coaches that support across all buildings. And so we're really excited about having that strong team of our coaches because it really helps us to take, we have great teachers and it helps them to focus on their practice and get even better. For example, you think about a fabulous quarterback like Tom Brady. He's a wonderful quarterback, and he works with that coach all of the time to continue to get better. And that's what our teachers do, to continue to get better. And so some of the things that I'd like to highlight for our coaching cycles is a coaching cycle. When we talk about a coaching cycle, it's not just a one and done, but many times it's over a period of a time where a teacher will invite a coach to say, hey, I really want to get better at implementing this math concept, or I'm not sure, I have some students that are really struggling with a certain skill. Can you come in and help me? And so it could be a one-time meeting, or it could be a meeting over a series of time. It could be where the coach works alongside the teacher and they do co-teaching together. So they're both in the classroom working together. So a cycle is a variety amounts of time. But over this last year, from last January to this December, we've had over 2,500 coaching cycles through kindergarten through 8th grade in our buildings. And that's an average of 171 cycles per each coach. The tasks that they do, as I said, vary. It's really based on the needs of the teachers and the needs of the students in those classes. But some of the most types of tasks that they do is that co-planning is number one on the list, co-teaching, and then really working on that instructional differentiation, or helping the teacher to make sure that they're looking at the needs of the students and how are they meeting the needs in that classroom for each individual student. And then as they look at the invitation, our coaching is always by invitation. It's not where the principal says to the coach, you need to go and work with Roger because he needs to improve in such and such. It's the coaches are invited in by the teachers, and we collect data on who's inviting them in. And in the different coaching cycles, you can see the majority of the cycles, they're general ed teachers, but we also have a high number of our high ability teachers, a high number of our special ed teachers, and then a high number of our teachers that are general ed teachers, but they're focused on helping our English learners, that they're bringing those coaches in as well. And then the topics vary as well, but you can see the top topics have to do with reading, phonics, and math. And when the next three topics look at phonological awareness, science, and writing. So you can see that high emphasis on the literacy pieces, and that many times that is when we're bringing in those new programs. So this evening, I just wanted to share with you a bit about what we've been focusing on over the last 2 years to really focus on how we're accelerating that learning for our students and keeping that at the forefront of what we're doing and making sure that we are reinventing and reimagining what Carmel Clay Schools looks like for all of our students and our community. And I apologize that I couldn't get our PowerPoint to work correctly. I'll make sure you have that. But with that, any questions?
Thank you so much, Dr. Dudley. And there were so many, and like I definitely had to get my readers on, but I think so many of those things are definitely things that we can share out because I think there's so much great information. And I think I love the theme of the fact that we're working hard to be better. And I think that's one of the great things. And I love how you talked about the fact that the teachers are the ones that they're kind of reaching out and want to be able to do that. And I think it always definitely trickles down to our kids, which is the most important thing. Questions from the board?
Well, I love how you all look down here. Yes, I have a couple. As we were talking about, it's not necessarily learning loss, but there's still more learning that we can do. How are we continuing to measure that throughout the school year to ensure that we are meeting our students where they are and they continue to grow?
Yes, great question. And so as I shared, we use a variety of different assessments. We twice a year, we do use the NWA map. Right now, our students are engaging in the winter NWA map. We're just finishing that up. But in between that, we also have a variety of formative as well as summative assessments. And when we talk about the formative assessments is what's happening right in the moment. So many of our teachers they'll do a lesson, and then they might do, before the students finish that activity or leave the class, they do an exit ticket to determine who has learned, who knows that learning target for that day. And when the students didn't master the learning target, then what are we going to do about it? And that's the important piece of, okay, then what does our instruction need to look like the next day to make sure that not only do they master that learning target, but then they continue to build upon the learning of that next day, and how might we change that instruction? And so that might look like where we're working with small groups of students in the classroom. We might be working one-on-one. We might be doing some reteaching or some pre-teaching for our students as well. So we've used that formative assessment or that assessment right in the moment. And then we also use that summative assessment, and that might look like a unit test. And then the other piece with that is, okay, it's still not done with the unit test. And many of our teachers in our schools are working on looking at how are we doing some of that reteaching, and then also have given students the opportunity to retest. Just like we want to make sure that it's not about the grades, but it's about the learning and how are we reporting on that learning. And so those are the pieces that we're working on to make sure that the students are understanding those concepts. And then when they don't understand those concepts, how are we responding to that?
Okay, my second question has to do with our English language learners, their teacher of record. Could you touch up on that one just a little more?
Certainly. So right now we have in the high school, we have 4 different teachers that are considered the teacher of record. And so they have a caseload of English language learners. So all of the students, we have 128 English language learners at the high school, and they're divided up. And so the teacher has this caseload where they have them in SRT, so they have the opportunity to get to know the students, and then they are the advocate, or they help to advocate for the students. So if the student needs more help in science, making sure they understand how do they get that help. They also interact with the teachers on, okay, they're looking at the students' grades, they're looking at how the students are doing, and then they're working with the teachers to say, okay, they need more help in this class, or they need something different in this class, and how might we work together to make sure the students are successful. So we have our TORs right now at the high school, and then we also have TORs at the middle school. Next year, we will have them at the elementary school. With the high school and the middle school is a little bit easier because of their block schedule. They don't have one block, so that then they have the time to work with their students. At the elementary school, that's a little more difficult because many of our elementary teachers don't have blocks of time like that. They're teaching all day long. So we're looking at ways of how we'll support that at the elementary. It'll look a little bit differently.
So did the students loop, or did the teachers loop with the student? So it's the same teacher of record for sequential years, since they have that relationship that they've already built with that student?
Yes, that is the plan right now, that we'll continue to keep that group together so that they can do that.
Thank you. Other questions? Ms. Jackson?
Thank you so much, Dr. Dudley. I really appreciate that detailed overview. Can you do that, detailed overview? But I really am excited about the development, and I heard design thinking. That's something I think is just a really good resource for children when they're looking at new concepts. So that introductory and thinking about putting that in our schools, I think is great. And then Project Lead the Way for the elementary level, really excited about seeing or hearing more about that. I did have a quick question. It was just around supplemental learning opportunities or resources for parents. Have we thought about how we can look into that so that we can maybe give some options to parents if they see that there is something that they want their child to lean in more on or gain additional skills in, get additional support in? Are there resources?
Mm-hmm. So are you specifically looking at after school or summer programming? Is that what you're specifically?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, so one of the things that we've had, and we've not implemented, we haven't brought it back yet, just with different transportation issues and the way we've had to change our transportation. It's, for example, at the middle school, we had supplemental after-school study hall that was staffed by our staff members that helped our students to really get that extra help that they might need. There's also a variety of different programs out there. There was one that we just became aware of that we were looking into before we shared it with parents, but it's one-on-one virtual free tutoring, and specifically in the areas of math. We wanted to gather some more information on that. That was just put out by the state. We wanted to make sure that that was a good opportunity for our students, but helping our parents to be aware of those. And then I think really encouraging our parents to partner with the teachers in the classes and stay in contact with the teachers, looking at Power School, looking at how are the students doing in their assignments, and then catching them early before things fall apart completely, and keeping that open dialogue with our teachers is so important to look at that. You know, one of the things we have for our summer learning, we've looked at the last couple of years where we've did some programming with our youngest learners in the areas of literacy, to making sure we're catching up our youngest learners. We focused specifically on our students that were going into third grade, and then the year before we focused specifically on students that were coming out of kindergarten. And part of that was because some of them were not in school, or they just had that interrupted learning, and we wanted to really make sure that we were focusing on that early literacy pieces of that. And last year we did pilot a math jumpstart program at our middle school, and we're looking at that data to say how much of a difference is that making? Is that worth that time that we're doing with the learning? Because really, when you look at the research with the summer programs, there's not a lot of good research out there that is a real positive piece of that it's real effective. It does work when we're looking at it in our high school for that credit recovery, for our students that retake classes because they want to get a better grade in their class, where they got less than a C-, and they're going for that academic honors, and they can get that credit for that class. But when you're really looking at those skills in those younger grades, finding those just right programs that really make a difference is so important, and it's difficult to do that. So that's something that we continue to look at.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Dr. Dudley.
Thank you.
We will now move to the monthly financial update by Mr. McMichael.
Okay. There we go. Yeah. Make sure we have the same thing on my computer that's on the screen, but okay, so we've ended the calendar year for calendar year 21 in our education fund, our operating referendum fund, and our rainy day fund. We had expenditures of just over $136 million. We ended with a cash balance of just almost $10.5 million, which is very close to 8%, which is, the board's aware, that's our minimum. We don't particularly look we don't track the December 31st balance like we have in years past. When the state started funding the education fund, they're doing that on a July 1, June 30th fiscal year. So now the June 30th balance, we focus much more on the June 30th balance than we do the December 31st. But nevertheless, you'll see if you compare this year with last year, keeping in mind that this year we're including the rainy day fund, and we've talked about that before as well. We would like to ultimately get our balance up. It's a minimum of 8%. We'd like to get it up closer to the 12% range. And so if you compare this year to last year, this year's up about $1.5 million, but you'll see in a minute that the $1.5 million is in the rainy day fund. And so if you compare the two funds from one year to the next, we happen to be just about the same. All of which is where we were projecting. So we did end the year about where we anticipated. And again, this is the 2020 Education and Referendum Fund. In the Operations Fund, we ended with a balance with about almost $28 million of expense. We ended with a balance of $4.4 million, and that happens to be also about the same as 2020. And honestly, that's probably more coincidence than anything else, because in our operation fund, we have things like facility projects and so forth that they're not, unlike the education fund that's 93% salary and benefits, which are, every 2 weeks payroll and so forth. So it's much more comparable than the operations fund. But we're in very solid financial condition with our operations fund, with that ending balance of about $4.4 million. Then, as I said, the rainy day fund, you may recall that the board approved transferring $1.5 million from our operations fund to the rainy day fund, and that's just pretty much the balance that we ended this year with. If you compare last year, we transferred $3 million, a majority of which, over $2 million of that, was used to pay what we referred to as the COVID stipend in June. And then we continued to pay the additional expenses as a result of the pandemic. We had additional teachers that were necessary, particularly the first year when we were teaching in person as well as remote. And we continue to have some expenses, very minor, relatively speaking, as compared to where it started, but we still were paying, this year, paying COVID trackers, for example. So we did have some expense out of the rainy day fund that in the future, we don't anticipate that much expense from this fund, but it will contribute to our overall cash balance, which will at least, if not improve our financial condition. It is something that Standard & Poor's would like to see. And since we are selling bond issues regularly, we think that's important. And then the rest of the report is just ending balances and so forth. And so with that, I'd respond to any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Michael. Any questions from the board? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We will now move on to board members' report. Legislative update, Ms. Vandenberg.
Thank you. Well, first, easy. Thank you, board, for approving our legislative letter. We will have that posted to the website under school board, the legislative update, or the, I actually just pulled this up, legislative priorities. So we'll update that as we do each year. And we will also update, as I'm looking at the website itself, our legislative contacts. Some of those have changed, so we will get that updated as well. First, I'll just want to point out that our legislative session officially began on January 4th, and is in addition to getting updates from what we hear in the news, as well as what we get from Church Hiddle. We also have been getting feedback from Seamus Boyce, who's been working with us as well for legislative updates. The Indiana School Board Association has also been working very closely, and they're the State House Daily. They have been providing us some great feedback. What I do want to share and just highlight a couple different bills that are currently out there that really impact us in this upcoming year. I think it's something that we are going to want to closely watch. The partisan school board election bill. There are 7 different bills discussing this. Several have gone through committee, and we will see what comes out of committee. That is actually next week. Next week is the midterm of the short session, and so bills have to get through committee by next Tuesday and Thursday. Tuesday for one house, Thursday for the Senate. So the bipartisan or the partisan school bill election bill is one. The other key one that I just want to touch on, House Bill 1072, the school referendum levies. One of the concerns, well, several concerns, but this will, if this goes through, will definitely impact Carmel Clay schools as well as all of their school systems. What it calls is that any monies that have been, that our community puts forth for a school referendum for our school district, being the operation or safety referendums. Those will have to be shared with any charter school that a student in our school district might attend. So if we have students that go to 15 different charter schools around central Indiana, we would have to then divvy up what we get from our school district amongst all of them. So that is a significant concern. And that is one that we are closely watching. The House Bill 1130, which I think we completely support, I'm not certain that all school boards do, but we certainly do. That one is the public comments at meetings, and this will just require school boards to provide an opportunity for public comment by members of the community who are physically present at the meeting. And I know we fully support that, and we have for several years. And so that's, I thought, an interesting one. And within this bill, it actually limits them to no less than 3 minutes per speaker. So I thought that was rather interesting. There are several other education matters, but we really won't know a whole lot until the midterm. And then we will have some idea of where we really need to have some good conversation about the direction that we want to go as a district and how we can best support the schools in the state of Indiana and provide some feedback to our legislators. So with that, if there's anything you've heard or any comments or questions, I'm happy to take those. The one other comment I do want to make is that on the 15th, which is a Tuesday the 15th, the Indiana School Board Association is having their big legislative day downtown. I will be there. It is open to other members of each board, and we'll have an opportunity to hear from several of our legislators, as well as have specific meetings with our local legislators on that day as well. So that is a nice opportunity to have some additional communication. We're fortunate in our district that we continue to have those conversations, so it doesn't, it's not as, I wouldn't say important for us to be present, but it is important for all school districts to really work on the relationships that we have, because our legislators really are very important members of our, I would say of our school system, to be honest with you, because they make decisions that really impact the livelihood of our professional educators, our administrators, and most importantly, our children. So with that, I'll open up for questions, or if Dr. Beresford has other comments he'd like to share with regards to the legislative session, please do.
And you did a real nice job explaining all that. The real action's coming up when the midterms go through, and then all the deals are getting made. So we just have to pay careful attention and act as that resource that we like to do for our legislators.
Thank you. Any questions? Any other questions? Okay. All right. We will now move on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Beresford.
No, thank you very much, and really appreciate the reports tonight. I tell you, now I understand why the curriculum instruction assessment team looks so tired with all the, when you look at that year in review, and when you said that you were off cycle because of COVID, I think we're all off cycle because of COVID and what we've gone through in the last couple of years. But you finished with talking a little bit about the coaches. I just want to make a quick comment about that. Is there's a lot of research out there that the biggest bang for your buck, where you can really move the needle as far as what happens in the classroom, is that coaching model, where teachers get to work on specific skills a lot of times that they choose, and it's very effective. So that collaboration is really special and really pushes us all higher. My superintendent's report wanted to begin as a matter of record that I'm appointing Carmel Clay Schools Board Secretary, Ms. Jennifer Nelson Williams, and Board Member Mike Kirshner to serve on the Policy Committee. Assistant Superintendent Dr. Dudley will continue to coordinate that committee, and I just want to thank you guys for taking on that responsibility. It's a big one, and I appreciate the work that's going to be done there. I thought I'd start out with a COVID-19 update. And you know, we were all shocked, I guess, by all the cases that we've had recently, and historically we've seen 2 weeks after a break is where we would see a big increase, and that came true again. Now, we saw the positive cases trend down at the high school and the middle school this week, but slightly higher at the elementary school side. Overall, it declined a little bit. I would call it more of a leveling off than I'd call it a sharp decline or anything. But we're hoping that history, the history we've seen with this thing for the last couple of years, that we'll see a decrease thereafter. So we're hopeful, that we'll see that again. We saw an overall decrease in student quarantines last week, with a little over 1,000 students were quarantined for the 5 days per the new Indiana State Department of Health guidelines. Because we require masks, close contacts do not need to be quarantined. So just for factual information, if we did not require masks, the quarantine numbers would be quite larger, a lot larger. So because of that rule, that's keeping a lot of our kids in school. Indiana State Department of Health also gave new contact tracing guidance on communicating more broadly with families regarding close contacts. Now, I think mostly because of the fast spread of this variant is the reason why they made those changes to the contact tracing, really communication. So now what we're going to do in response to that also, we're going to post more detailed information by our school on our community report. So you'll be able to see accurate data that shows how many positive cases there are in your kid's school and also their quarantines. And then also continue to remind families to keep students home if they have symptoms, along with the other mitigation strategies that are noted on our website, and also on the Indiana Department of Health's websites. A lot of the contact tracing now with this large volume of students was mostly our administrative staff are contact tracing and calling parents and telling them to watch for symptoms. And we're going to keep, saying that, but I think everybody, and at least everybody I know knows that you need to watch, for symptoms. And of course, if kids are ill, keep them home. And but that's how we're going to proceed, and then we'll just see where the numbers take us. So that was my update on COVID-19. I also want to make you aware that with Dr. Harmis's retirement announcement, we began the search process for the next principal of Carmel High School. The position was posted today, and we anticipate an exceptional pool of candidates who want to continue the Greyhound tradition of excellence and lead the state's largest high school on into the future. We're searching for someone who understands the importance of collaborative leadership and can demonstrate the skills that are needed to bring people together to achieve at high levels. We want someone who can live out our vision that together we achieve, and that we achieve higher and broader and better for the students and families we serve. So we're excited about that process getting launched, and as we search for that important position. Talking about the high school, this is Culture of Care Week, and so this event is sponsored by all of our building level counselors and social workers as a way to promote positive mental health. And there are spirit days each day and daily tips on finding small ways to spread joy to others, to take care of yourself, and to take care of one another. And it's a real positive week at the high school. And I believe this is the 3rd or 4th year of Culture of Care, and always such a positive thing. Now, this evening I have 2 bell ringers, and so it's going to double dip you here. But first one is to recognize our own Emily Bauer, who's lurking around here someplace. Emily Bauer back there, our community relations director. And today is actually Community Manager Appreciation Day. So we'll hold your applause till the end. This day is celebrated annually on the 4th Monday of January. It was created in 2010 as a way to recognize the efforts of community managers globally. The life of a community manager, in our case it's a community relations director, is a hectic one. Endless monitoring, conversation after conversation, and nonstop content creation. There's a saying that social media never sleeps, and neither do community managers. That is why on this day we celebrate community managers, and in this case, our Director of Community Relations. So Emily Bauer, thank you. And we appreciate you and for all of your hard work and dedication to our CCS family. So thank you, Emily. So, and I'm glad you're wearing a mask, so you're not blushing too much back there. And then my second bell ringer was, you guys kind of stole my thunder already, but it was to celebrate our new board president, Katie Browning, and congratulate her on her first full board meeting as board president, and also to celebrate your birthday today. So congratulations, Katie, and thanks for all you do for the students and families that we serve. And I also thank the entire board for the time that you put in to make our school system great. So with that, I'm going to invite everyone to do 3 claps and a wish for Katie Browning and for Emily Bauer. If you don't know about that, I can explain it to you later. And that concludes my superintendent's report for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Beresford. All right, so coming up February 15th, we have our school board workshop session meeting. February 21st is President's Day. And then our regular session meeting, February 28th and March 14th. I just want to take a moment to thank you so much for coming tonight. It is so important and for you to be involved in your school district, and I am so glad to see all of you here, and you have made it a wonderful birthday. So thank you very, very much. With that, I will take a motion to adjourn. You guys want to stay here? Motion to adjourn? So moved. Do I have a second? Second, meeting adjourned. Thank you.